Hey there, and welcome to our channel. Here we dive into powerful stories of women who rise above betrayal, heartbreak, and life's toughest challenges. Every story will move you, inspire you, and remind you of your own strength. So before we begin, hit that subscribe button, join our growing family, comment below where you watching from, and let's step into today's story together.
They say sisters are your first best friends, the one person who knows your heart before the world does. But they never tell you what happens when that same person learns how to break it. The story didn't begin with betrayal. It began with celebration, champagne glasses, glittering invites, and the kind of laughter that hides something darker underneath. When my sister Grace called that morning, her voice sounded softer than usual. Too soft. "Em," she said, "I've got news." I was editing a photo shoot from the night before, sunlight spilling across my keyboard, still half asleep, but smiling. "You're finally getting married," I teased. She laughed. "You already knew, didn't you?" Of course I did. I'd helped her pick the dress, the venue, the photographer, or at least I thought I would. She continued. "We sent out the invitations today." "Oh, that's fast," I said, scrolling through emails, waiting for mine. "You'll love the design. Gold trim, minimalist. Very you." And then, casually, as if it were a passing note, I decided not to have a maid of honor. My smile froze. "You mean not yet?" "No, I mean not at all," she said lightly. "You know how attention shifts when you're around? It's just easier this way." There was a silence, heavy, unreal. She wasn't joking. I laughed anyway, the kind of laugh that sounds like swallowing glass. "Grace, are you saying I'm not in your wedding party?" "Em, don't make it sound like that. You'll still be there. Just let me have this one moment, okay?" Her words landed like frost. I said nothing. She didn't notice. After the call, I stared at my reflection in the laptop screen, the faint outline of a woman who'd just been written out of her own family's story. She didn't uninvite me that day. She just began practicing how. A few days later, the official invitation arrived in the mail. Gold-trimmed, just like she said, my name printed neatly, without a title. No bridesmaid Emily, no sister of honor. Just Emily Cole. Guest. I held it under the light, the foil gleaming like mockery. I'd photographed hundreds of weddings in my career, captured tears, vows, promises that never lasted. But I'd never imagined I'd have to frame one I wasn't invited to belong in. That evening, I went to our family dinner. Grace had chosen the restaurant, somewhere upscale with dim lighting and mirrored walls that made everything look shinier than it felt. My mother was radiant, talking about floral arrangements, the honeymoon, Grace's perfect taste. Grace, meanwhile, sat at the head of the table, glowing with attention. Her fiancé, Lucas, squeezed her hand every few minutes like punctuation marks in a story about control. "So, Emily," my mother said, "how's work? Still doing photography?" Grace laughed softly. "Of course she is, Mom. Emily doesn't change. She just edits reality until it looks the way she wants." There was polite laughter, the kind that stings. I smiled thinly. Someone has to capture what's real, right? Grace's eyes met mine, sweet, sharp. "You know, Em, not everything needs to be about the camera. Maybe put it down once in a while. Try living instead of observing." It was meant as advice. It landed as an insult. The waiter poured wine. Grace raised her glass. "To family. To perfect timing." The glass slipped in my hand, just a small motion, but enough for crimson wine to spill across the white tablecloth. It spread quickly, blooming like a wound. Everyone gasped. Grace sighed, exasperated. "See, this is exactly what I mean, always making a scene." I muttered an apology, dabbing at the mess. My cheeks burned hotter than the wine. No one spoke again for a full minute. That was the moment I realized this dinner wasn't about celebration. It was a performance, and I'd just played my assigned role, the embarrassment. That night, I didn't spill wine. I spilled my last illusion of being loved without condition. After dinner, Grace pulled me aside. "You didn't have to make it awkward," she said. Her tone clicked, but sugar-coated. "Lucas's parents were there." I stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "You humiliated me in front of our family, Grace." She frowned. "No, you embarrassed yourself. I just corrected the narrative." Her words sliced clean through the air. "The narrative?" I repeated. She tilted her head. You're a storyteller, Em. You know how it works? Sometimes one character just doesn't fit. I walked away before she could see how much that line hurt. But later, alone in my car, her words replayed like a broken tape. Sometimes one character just doesn't fit. For the first time, I realized she wasn't jealous. She was territorial. And I wasn't her sister anymore. I was her competition. Some betrayals don't scream. They whisper in dinner wine and half smiles. 3 days later, the real blow came. Quiet, digital, cruelly efficient. A text message. From Grace. Em, it's better if you don't come to the wedding. You'll make things uncomfortable. I hope you understand. Understand? The room tilted. My stomach turned to lead. I typed a dozen replies. Are you serious? What did I do? You're my sister. Deleted them all. Instead, I just sent one word. Okay. Then I threw my phone across the bed and sat there, breathing hard, feeling the silence fold around me like a cage. It was one thing to be insulted, another to be erased. I walked to the mirror, looked at my reflection, and whispered. She just disinvited her own sister. The mirror didn't flinch. Neither did I. Somewhere deep inside, something fragile began to harden. Grief doesn't always cry. Sometimes it takes notes. I spent that night scrolling through old photo folders. Birthdays, vacations, childhood Christmas mornings where Grace and I wore matching pajamas, our faces smeared with cake. Every image, evidence of a history rewritten overnight. Each click of the mouse felt like reopening a wound. Each photograph, a ghost that refused to fade. I stopped at one picture. Us, as kids, sitting on the porch, holding our first camera. Grace's arm around me, her smile genuine. I remembered that day vividly, how we promised to always be each other's biggest fan. I laughed bitterly. Promises age faster than love. When the clock struck midnight, I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. A single thought pulsed in my mind. Rhythmic, cold, electric. She erased me. But a quieter voice followed. Then I'll show her what she tried to erase. She shut the door on me, but forgot I owned the key of truth.
Sleep never came that night. Every time I closed my eyes, her voice replayed. It's better if you don't come to the wedding. I tried to convince myself it was temporary, that she'd call tomorrow, laughing it off, saying, you know how I get when I'm stressed. But the phone stayed silent. And silence, I learned, can be louder than anger. The next morning, my mother called. She spoke carefully, the way people do when they already know the truth. Emily, Grace told me about the wedding. She said you overreacted. I almost laughed. Overreacted to being erased? She's under pressure, honey. These things get complicated. She's marrying a man, Mom, not launching a space shuttle. There was a pause, the kind filled with guilt no one wants to admit. She said it's for the best, my mother murmured. For the best. I repeated, whose? The call ended on a sigh. That sound stayed with me, the sound of a parent choosing peace over fairness. Hours passed like ghosts. I opened my work laptop, stared at the screen, but every photo I edited blurred into her face. The memories, the laughter, the childhood promises, all of it pixelated into something I couldn't fix. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I picked up my camera. When words failed me, I started framing the silence. Photography had always been my language, my truth teller. So that night I drove, aimlessly at first, then toward the coast. The sky was bruised with storm clouds, the sea restless, mirroring everything I felt. I stood there barefoot on the sand, camera in hand, the wind whipping my hair. Every wave felt like a heartbeat. Every shutter click, a small act of survival. Somewhere between the storm and the silence, I realized Grace didn't just disinvite me from her wedding. She tried to delete me from the narrative of her life. But stories don't disappear when you cut out a character. They just find a new author. When I got home, my phone was buzzing. A text from my cousin Hannah. You okay? Saw the post. My stomach dropped. What post? She sent a screenshot. It was Grace, smiling with her bridal party, captioned, "My circle, the only ones who've truly been there for me." Hundreds of comments flooded the post. "So beautiful, perfect sisters, can't wait for the wedding." Except, I wasn't there. My absence screamed louder than any caption. And then, buried deep in the thread, one comment caught my eye. "Where's Emily?" Grace had replied, "Some people prefer being behind the camera." A laugh escaped me, sharp, bitter. She'd weaponized my own passion. That's when something in me shifted. Not sadness, not even rage. Focus. If she wanted me behind the camera, I'd stay there. But this time, the lens wouldn't protect her image. It would reveal it. She turned my silence into scenery, not realizing I was still the director. The following week, I stopped avoiding social media. Instead, I started watching, quietly. Grace was everywhere. Fittings, cake tastings, pre-wedding brunches. Every photo looked perfect. Too perfect. And in perfection, I found patterns. Same dress boutique twice in 1 week, but different captions. Same luxury restaurant, with bridesmaids, but a man's reflection visible in the wine glass background. Lucas's best friend, absent from every tagged photo. Grace had built her image like a movie set, flawless on the surface, cracked in the corners. And I had proof. Every lie leaves fingerprints, even digital ones. A few nights later, my cousin Hannah messaged again. "You won't believe this. Grace banned phones at the wedding, says that she wants it private." Private? That word pulsed like a warning. No phones, no witnesses, just the perfect audience she could control. And suddenly I knew, whatever she was hiding, it would happen there. So I made a decision. I would go. Not as a guest, not as her sister, but as the only person still brave enough to see the truth. The day of the wedding arrived in gold sunlight. The venue, a countryside estate, all glass walls and manicured gardens. From a distance, it looked like something out of the dream. Up close, it felt like a stage. I parked far enough not to be seen and watched guests enter. My camera rested on the seat beside me, a silent accomplice. Through my telephoto lens, I saw her, radiant, laughing, flawless in white, the woman who erased me. And for a brief second, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. Because she looked terrified of blinking, like she knew the moment she did, the image might fall apart. She built perfection so carefully, she forgot truth doesn't follow scripts. I stayed hidden until the ceremony ended. Then, while the guests moved to the reception hall, I entered through the back. Years of shooting weddings taught me how to blend in, invisible, unnoticeable. I moved through the crowd, snapping pictures, not of flowers or decor, but faces. Lucas's forced smile, Grace's trembling hands, the maid of honor whispering to a stranger in the corner. The cracks were everywhere, and my camera caught them all. Later, as I slipped out, a waiter passed by carrying champagne. A glass fell, shattering at my feet. The sound turned every head, including hers. Our eyes met for the first time in weeks. Recognition, shock, and something darker. She mouthed one word, "Leave." I smiled, raised my camera, and pressed the shutter. The flash lit her face like a confession. That was the moment she realized the truth had already RSVP'd. That night, I uploaded every photo, one by one, and there it was, the image that changed everything. In the background of a group shot, half hidden by floral arches, was Lucas, not with Grace, but with the maid of honor. His hand resting on his waist, her eyes locked on his. One frame, one mistake. All the proof I needed. I didn't post it, not yet. Instead, I stared at it for hours, the way you look at fire before deciding whether to touch it. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. My cousin's messages flooded my phone. "Emily, it's everywhere. Someone leaked the photos." Photos? I hadn't shared them. Someone else had. I opened my feed, and there it was. The picture. Dozens of shares, hundreds of comments. Isn't that the groom? Who's the bridesmaid? Fake fairy tale, real disaster. The story spread faster than wildfire. Within hours, the perfect wedding had turned into the viral betrayal. And I hadn't lifted a finger. Grace called me that afternoon. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Her voice was frantic. "Emily, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "You made the scene. I just caught the lighting." She screamed something I couldn't make out, then hung up. I sat there, the phone still warm in my hand, and realized something that almost made me laugh. All my life, she told me I was invisible, but now the whole world saw what she'd tried to hide, and the irony? The photos had been uploaded from her own bridesmaid's account. Karma didn't need my help. It just needed a camera. She banned me from the wedding, but forgot you can't ban truth from showing up.
That night, I returned to my editing desk, same place this story began. My camera sat there, quiet, almost smug. On the screen, her perfect world still flickered in pixels, half a dream, half a warning. I leaned back, whispering to no one in particular. She wanted me gone from her wedding, but somehow, I ended up in every photo that mattered. And for the first time, I smiled, not out of revenge, but relief. Because the story had written itself. I'd just been patient enough to frame it. She erased me from her wedding, but not from the story the world would soon see. The morning after the viral chaos felt strangely quiet. No calls from Grace, no family messages, just a dozen missed calls from unknown numbers, probably reporters or gossip pages pretending to fact-check. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I made coffee, sat at my desk, and opened my laptop. My camera still rested there, like an old friend who just watched me survival war. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't angry. I was curious. Curious about how far the lie went, and how deep it had been buried before truth finally crawled out on its own. As I logged into my accounts, I saw something odd. I'd been tagged in new posts. Not many, just a few scattered photos from the wedding rehearsal, uploaded by distant relatives. I almost ignored them, until one thumbnail caught my eye. Grace, in her rehearsal gown, standing near the altar, smiling, and in the reflection of a decorative mirror behind her, a hand. Not hers, not Lucas's, someone else's. A man's hand, resting gently on her waist. I leaned closer. The lighting was poor, but even in the blur, I knew what I saw wasn't coincidence. The lies weren't in the photo. They were in what everyone refused to see. I opened another picture, then another. Different angles, different guests. Same pattern. Every time Grace was in frame, something or someone felt out of place. A reflection too close, a shadow that didn't belong. A bracelet that vanished between shots. It wasn't paranoia. It was proof. Grace's perfect wedding hadn't just been a disaster. It had been staged, and not just emotionally, digitally. Whoever edited those early uploads had tried to remove someone from the photos, but they weren't good at it. And to a professional photographer, bad editing screams louder than words. So I started investigating, not to expose her this time, not yet, but to understand the story I'd accidentally uncovered. Because every image tells two stories, the one in front of the camera and the one hiding behind it. By evening, I downloaded over 70 photos, each one more suspicious than the last. The metadata, timestamps, GPS data, digital fingerprints didn't line up. Some images were taken seconds apart, yet showed different lighting and expressions. Someone had manipulated the narrative. I opened Photoshop and began enhancing frame by frame. The glow from the screen painted my face blue, the color of cold truth. There, in one zoomed-in corner, I saw him. Not Lucas. Someone older. Someone familiar. A shadow near Grace's reflection, close enough to whisper.
And that's when I realized the real betrayal wasn't just marital, it was orchestrated. When the picture finally focused, I saw it wasn't about love, it was about control. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "You don't know what really happened that night. -D. I stared at it, confused. Then it clicked. Daniel, Grace's wedding planner's assistant, the nervous guy who had avoided eye contact all through the engagement party. I texted back, "Meet me, tomorrow, noon, neutral ground." He replied almost instantly, "Only if no one knows. They're watching everything." They. The word hung heavy. Who were they? The next day, I met Daniel at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place where anonymity is the house specialty. He looked exhausted, pale, like someone who hadn't slept since the wedding. When he saw me, he flinched slightly. "You shouldn't have come." "I didn't invite myself to the wedding either," I said flatly, "but here we are." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "I can't show you everything, but you need to see this." He opened a folder labeled Archive 7. Inside, raw photos from the wedding shoot. Unedited, untouched. And just like that, the lie unraveled. Grace wasn't just hiding an affair. She was hiding a scandal. Lucas, her now husband, hadn't just been unfaithful. He was embezzling money from his company, and she'd known it. Worse, she'd helped her cover it up. The wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a laundering operation. Expensive vendors, fake invoices, hidden transfers. Grace didn't ban phones to protect privacy. She banned them to protect evidence. She didn't ban me from the wedding. She banned witnesses. I sat there stunned. Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear. "I shouldn't have told you. They're already blaming the leak on you." "Of course they are," I said softly. "That's what people do when truth makes them ugly." He slid me a flash drive. "This has everything. Use it wisely." I tucked it into my jacket, thanked him, and left. But as I walked out, I noticed something chilling. A black car parked across the street. Windows tinted, engine running. Coincidence? Maybe. But paranoia is just logic in disguise. That night, I didn't sleep again. I couldn't. I plugged in the flash drive and opened the files. Documents, photos, emails. Every secret she'd buried, labeled neatly, waiting for light. At the top, a folder titled Project G. Inside, photos of the venue, lists of vendors, invoices, all linked to one company, Golden Oak Productions. I searched the name. Fake. Non-existent. Just a shell business. Registered under Grace's name 3 months before the wedding. The pieces fit perfectly. Grace's wedding wasn't ruined by betrayal. It was built on it. And somehow, I, the sister she disinvited, had stumbled on the proof.
By sunrise, I'd organized everything. Each file, each timestamp, each photo. By sunrise, every file sat neatly labeled on my desktop. Dates, times, faces, motives. I'd spent the night cataloging betrayal as if it were art. Each click, each cropped frame, each zoom in on Grace's smile taught me the same thing. Perfection was a costume. Truth was texture. I renamed the folder Blueprint, because that's exactly what it had become. A design for her undoing. I wasn't rushing. I was composing. The timer on my phone blinked steadily, like a quiet heartbeat. Every image was already edited and captioned, each one scheduled for release on a hidden account. Not yet public, but ready. Not revenge, not yet. Strategy. Grace's world revolved around attention, so I would give her the kind of attention she couldn't curate. I built a sequence of 10 photos, each one more revealing than the last, each tagged with neutral phrases like behind the scenes, moments you missed, truth in frames. I scheduled the first drop for exactly 72 hours later. The countdown began. The coffee went cold beside me, untouched. For the first time in months, my heart didn't ache, it ticked. When I stopped waiting for her apology, the truth started waiting for my signal. 2 days before launch, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Amy?" Her voice, smooth, rehearsed, trembling underneath. "Grace," I said flatly. She exhaled, pretending nostalgia. "It's been too long. I miss you." "Really? You missed me so much you banned me from your wedding?" Silence. Then brittle laughter. You know how family can be. It got complicated. No, you made it complicated. Her tone shifted. The sweetness cracked. Listen, she said tightly, don't post anything from that night. Some of the guests felt uncomfortable with cameras around. That was it. Not please, not I'm sorry, just a warning dressed as concern. My lips curved. Don't worry, Grace. I'm very selective about what I share. When the call ended, I didn't hesitate. I added one more post to the schedule. An image from the rehearsal dinner. Grace's fiancé, glass in hand, leaning too close to the maid of honor. A whisper caught in stillness. I uploaded it on a throwaway account. No caption, no tag. Within hours, it trended. People speculated, debated, dissected, the same way they'd once judged me. And for once, I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I simply watched the truth do what it always does when it's finally unchained. Spread. One photo went viral and panic followed faster than guilt. My inbox exploded before dawn. Grace, Lucas, even my mother. Everyone wanted me to clarify. But there was nothing to clarify. I hadn't said a word. I had only shown them what they refused to see. Then came the text that told me I'd hit the nerve. Stop or regret it. L. Lucas, her perfect husband. I stared at the message for a long minute, then typed back, then let's talk about forged charity funds, shall we? No reply. But I knew he'd read it. The 3 gray dots appeared, then vanished. That tiny hesitation tasted better than any revenge speech I could have written. The next morning, Grace's public persona cracked. Her Instagram went private, the family group chat filled with frantic messages. Who leaked that? Is this real? Delete it before sponsors see. Sponsors. Not love, not truth. Sponsors. That told me everything. She wasn't worried about betrayal, she was worried about branding. She feared exposure more than heartbreak. That's how I knew I'd finally found her weakness. The flash drive Daniel gave me still sat on my desk. I hadn't opened half of it yet, but now I did. Buried inside was a series of invoices marked confidential, event fund. Amounts so high they made my stomach twist. Each one traced back to Lucas's company account. Each payment approved by Grace. They'd turned their wedding into a laundering machine. Every flower arrangement, every imported champagne bottle, every donation receipt disguised a transaction. And now the receipts were mine. I encrypted them, stored backups in cloud drives, and printed hard copies just in case. I wasn't just exposing a scandal, I was securing the evidence before they destroyed it. That night, I stared at the ticking timer on my phone. 47 hours left. I whispered to the screen, "You wanted an audience, Grace. Now you'll have the whole world." Then I closed my laptop and finally slept. Not peacefully, but with purpose. She banned me to protect her lies. Now every picture will make her truth permanent. When I woke up, the world already buzzed with fragments of rumor. Someone had screen recorded the viral post before I deleted it. Too late to erase, too early to confess. Grace must have realized that panic doesn't delete pixels. I brewed coffee, logged into my scheduled posts, and adjusted the release timer, moved it 12 hours earlier. Why wait for karma when you can automate it? At noon, a courier arrived at my apartment. No sender name. Inside, a single envelope. No note, just a photograph. Grace and Lucas, smiling. And across the bottom, scrawled in red ink, "Stop." For the first time in weeks, I laughed. Not from amusement, from clarity. Threats were just proof of impact. When they start warning you to stop, it means you finally pressed play. Still, I wasn't reckless. I backed up every file on 3 drives, locked one in my safe deposit box, and mailed another to Daniel. He replied within an hour. "Be careful, they're desperate. Lucas called the photographer asking if you have originals." I texted back, "Tell him I have something better." Context. As night fell, the city outside buzzed with a thunderstorm. Rain streaked down my window, distorting the skyline. A perfect reflection of how truth looked when it finally surfaced. Messy, but unstoppable. At exactly 11 p.m., the timer reached 0. My scheduled post went live. Not a rant, not a confession, just 10 photos. Each frame told a piece of the puzzle. Smiling faces, missing jewelry, the wrong people standing too close, the hidden hand, the final kiss that wasn't meant for the groom. The captions were simple timestamps, no commentary, just facts. Within an hour, my notifications exploded again. Thousands of shares, millions of views. Comment sections turned into trial rooms. I didn't need to say a word. The internet had taken the case. I didn't destroy her reputation. I just handed it the mirror. By dawn, major blogs and news outlets had picked it up. Mystery photographer leaks wedding scandal. Heiress and CEO exposed in viral photo thread. My phone rang nonstop. I didn't answer any of them, except one. Daniel. His voice trembled. They're panicking. Grace's PR team is trying to frame you as a hacker, but I sent to media your proof of authenticity. Thank you, I whispered. He hesitated. You really think this will make you feel better? I thought for a moment. No, I said, but it will make me feel finished. By evening, Grace's empire of perfection collapsed. Her company released a statement denying rumors. Lucas deleted all social media. Family members stopped speaking publicly. And then the last twist came, the one I hadn't planned. Law enforcement opened an investigation into the fake charity invoices, the very ones they'd filed under Project G. I hadn't exposed that part. Someone else had. Maybe Daniel. Maybe the truth just got tired of hiding. Sometimes you don't have to burn their empire, you just open the blinds and let the sun in. That night, I sat by the window again, camera in hand, not to take new pictures, just to remember what it felt like, capturing honesty through glass. For months, I thought revenge would taste like triumph. It didn't. It tasted like closure. Quiet, steady, necessary. When my phone vibrated again, I almost ignored it, but the message made me pause. Congratulations, you got what you wanted. Message, Grace. I typed slowly. No, Grace, I got what you deserved. And pressed send. Her wedding ended in applause, mine began in silence, and still reached a louder truth. The posts stayed up for 48 hours before I deleted them. Not because of guilt, but because they'd done their job. Screenshots, shares, headlines, the internet had immortalized every pixel. I didn't need to hold on to it anymore. When I shut my laptop, I felt the weight lift. Not of revenge, but of release. The blueprint was complete, the story had developed, and for once, the photo didn't lie. She banned me to protect her lies. Now every picture will make her truth permanent. The storm came quietly, not the kind that rattled windows, but the kind that swept through headlines. By the third morning, Grace's wedding was no longer a celebration. It was evidence. Every major outlet had picked up the photos. Influencers dissected her dress, her vows, her body language. Hashtags trended, hashtag the uninvited sister, and hashtag the truth in frames. And all I did was watch. I didn't post, didn't reply, didn't explain. Silence had become my loudest statement. People asked for interviews. I ignored them, because the moment I spoke, it would stop being truth and start being drama. No, this time, truth didn't need commentary. It just needed space to echo. I didn't destroy her life. I just stopped editing the picture she painted. 2 days later, Daniel called again. Are you watching the news? No, I said, sipping coffee. I already know how it ends. He hesitated. You should still see it. I turned on the TV. Grace stood on the steps of a courthouse, cameras flashing like lightning. Her lawyer beside her, her mother behind her, her eyes hollow beneath perfectly curled hair. She said the words I knew she'd practice hours. These images were taken out of context. My sister's intent was malicious. Then she smiled, a smile that trembled just enough to make her look like the victim. But the camera didn't lie. The crowd didn't buy it. Comments flooded the live stream faster than her PR team could delete them. She used her own sister. Imagine banning family and still ending up exposed. Her empire, the sponsors, the designer collabs, the wedding magazine features, started to crumble. Not from hate, from exhaustion. People were tired of pretending perfection was real. That night, I received a voicemail from her. No greetings, no pleasantries, just her voice, raw, breaking. Why couldn't you just let it go? You got your spotlight. Isn't that enough? I stared at the phone. The irony cut deep. Spotlight. The word she'd always chased. I whispered to the dark room, I never wanted your spotlight, Grace. I wanted my dignity back. Then I deleted the message. She thought fame would make her untouchable, but the truth always finds better lighting. The next morning, I woke to another message. Not from Grace, from Lucas. Just 3 words. You ruined everything. I didn't respond. Because ruin is a choice, and they'd chosen their lies long before I chose the truth. By evening, journalists camped outside my building. I closed the blinds, made tea, and sat by the window. Same spot where I used to edit wedding portraits. This time, the light that filtered through the curtains didn't sting. It softened everything it touched. I thought of how Grace once said, "You'll always live in my shadow." She was right, because that's where photos develop best, in the dark. She tried to bury me under her spotlight, but I grew in her shadow instead. Later that week, Grace's sponsors released official statements withdrawing their partnerships. Her business accounts froze, and then came the biggest hit. Lucas filed for annulment. Apparently, betrayal works both ways. The photos of his cheating had gone public too. The maid of honor, now the ex-friend, was suddenly no comment. Grace's glamorous world collapsed inward, pixel by pixel. And as I watched the dominoes fall, I didn't feel joy, just quiet inevitability. I didn't plan this level of chaos. I'd only planned honesty. But when lies are this deep, truth doesn't whisper. It detonates. The last photo I had uploaded was still making rounds. Grace alone in her wedding gown, veil slipping, eyes distant. People captioned it, "The moment she realized." It wasn't meant to go viral. But that's what happens when you photograph truth. It demands to be seen. I didn't make her story viral. I just stopped keeping her secrets. By the 5th day, the entire city had an opinion. Grace was no longer Grace Ellis. She was the viral bride. Every talk show debated morality and media, sisters and scandals. People reposted old interviews where she'd preached about authentic living. The internet did what it always does, built her up just to tear her down. But for once, I wasn't watching from the sidelines. I was watching from peace, because I didn't need to prove anything anymore. She'd already done that for me, in every dishonest word, every staged smile. Daniel showed up unannounced that afternoon, holding a coffee and a stack of legal papers. "She's trying to sue you," he said. I nodded. "Of course she is." He sat across from me. "But she can't. You own the originals, and timestamps prove authenticity. Her lawyer will drop it." I smiled faintly. "Then that's one less performance for her to rehearse." He looked at me carefully. "You know, I don't think you did this for revenge." "Then what did I do it for?" I asked. He paused. "Closure." That night, I logged into my photography website, the one Grace once mocked as your little hobby. I updated the portfolio, quietly uploading a new section titled Unfiltered. 10 black and white frames. No captions, no context, just truth. She banned me to protect her image. I framed her truth instead. The following morning, my email pinged with a message from someone unexpected, a stranger. A woman named Harper wrote, "Your photos gave me the courage to leave a man who made me feel small for years. Thank you for reminding me that truth isn't cruel, it's cleansing." I read it twice, then again. And for the first time since all this began, I cried. Not for Grace, for me, for the version of myself that kept shrinking to keep others comfortable. Meanwhile, Grace disappeared from public view. No posts, no statements, just silence. Sometimes that's the universe's way of giving you back your peace, by taking away the noise. Her silence was the apology she'd never say out loud. Weeks passed. The internet moved on, as it always does. But I didn't delete the memories this time. I printed them, framed them, hung them in my studio not as trophies, but as proof. Pain can create something beautiful when you aim it at the truth. Each photo reminded me of what I'd learned, that even betrayal, under the right light, becomes art. Months later, Grace sent a short message, no subject line, just a single sentence. "You turned me into a villain." I typed back slowly. "No, I just showed the real story. You wrote the script yourself." Then I pressed send and deleted her number for good. She wanted to be the heroine. I just handed her the right mirror. That night, I finally reopened my camera bag, the same one that started everything. Inside, I found an old memory card, one I'd forgotten to check. It was from the night she uninvited me. A single photo remained. Grace and me, years ago, laughing. No walls between us yet. For a moment, I felt something shift. Not anger, not grief, acceptance. Because even though she broke the bond, I'd preserved the truth. And that was enough. I sat by the window as the sun began to rise, golden light spilling across the floor. The city outside was quiet again, and in that silence I whispered, not to her, but to myself. She banned me from her wedding to hide her truth, but now the world sees it, and I finally see me. She banned me from her wedding, but I gave the world front row seats to her truth.
The story didn't end when the cameras stopped flashing. It began the moment I decided not to look back. A year later, the city looked different. Or maybe I did. The same skyline that once felt sharp now felt calm, softened by time and distance. My studio sat on the third floor of an old brick building downtown. The sign outside read Ellis Studios, not Emily Ellis Photography, just Ellis. Because somewhere along the line, my name had stopped needing explanation. The walls inside weren't white or minimalist like most creative spaces. They were alive, lined with frames of people I'd helped rebuild their truths. Not celebrities, not influencers, just ordinary people who had been silenced, gaslighted, or erased. One photo showed a teacher holding a newspaper article, the one that cleared her name. Another captured a small business owner smiling beside her reopened shop. Each image was its own redemption. And in the middle of the wall hung a simple black frame with gold lettering. Truth ages better than lies. It wasn't decoration. It was policy. The world remembered me for the scandal. I rebuilt myself through the stories that healed others. Every morning started the same way. Coffee, sunrise, quiet. The world outside buzzed with its usual chaos, but my studio stayed still, like a heartbeat between storms. Sometimes clients came with trembling hands, afraid to even show me their screenshots or stories. I'd listen, then say softly, "You don't have to go viral to be seen. You just need to be honest." And somehow, they always left lighter. One afternoon, while editing a campaign for a women's awareness project, my assistant, Leela, peeked in. "There's someone here asking for you. Says it's personal." I sighed. I'd heard that line before. "Did they give a name?" She hesitated. "Grace Ellis." My hand froze on the mouse. The world tilted just slightly. It had been 12 months. 12 months of silence. 12 months of being no one's sister. "Send her in," I said, voice steady, though my heartbeat wasn't. Grace walked in slowly, her presence smaller than I remembered. No designer bag, no high heels, no camera-ready smile. Just jeans, a plain coat, and eyes that carried a year's worth of apology. She stood by the door, unsure if she was allowed to come closer. "I didn't know if you'd even see me." "I didn't know if you'd ever try," I replied. We stared at each other for a moment. Two women separated by pride, guilt, and blood. She finally stepped forward and placed something on the table. A small, weathered photo. Us, as kids, sitting under a blanket fort, giggling at something the camera never caught. Some memories don't fade. They just wait for the right apology to come find them. Grace took a deep breath. "I came to say I'm sorry, not for what the world saw, but for what you felt before they ever did." Her voice cracked. "I let envy turn into cruelty. You were better at everything. I couldn't stand it. I thought taking your place at my wedding would make me the star." She looked up, tears trembling on her lashes. "But I didn't realize. I only became famous for the lie." For a long time, I said nothing. Because forgiveness isn't a sentence you rush. It's a truth you unwrap slowly. Finally, I stood. "You hurt me, Grace. You made me question my worth. But here's the thing.
I needed that storm because it showed me what peace really is. She looked down, nodding. Do you hate me? I smiled faintly. No, I don't have to. You already did that for both of us. Grace let out a shaky laugh, the kind that breaks tension and history all at once. She whispered, You're still the better storyteller. Not really, I said softly. You just gave me one hell of a story to tell. We both laughed then. Awkward, fragile, but real. When she left, she didn't ask for a photo. She didn't need one. Sometimes closure isn't captured, it's simply witnessed. Forgiveness isn't surrender. It's the final photograph, untouched, unfiltered. Later that evening, I sat alone in the studio, staring at that childhood picture she'd left behind. The edges were worn, the colors faded, but the moment was eternal. Two sisters before envy, before betrayal, before all of it. I placed it on the wall between the framed quote and my newest client photo. Not to glorify the past, but to honor the lesson. Because that's what legacy really is. Not what we build from perfection, but what we rebuild from ruin. Our scars don't define us. They sign our names under every victory we've earned. Weeks passed. Ellis Studios gained quiet recognition. Podcasts called, news outlets requested interviews. I said no to most of them. I wasn't chasing noise anymore. One day, Leela came rushing in, holding her phone. Emily, your name's trending again. I raised an eyebrow. What now? She smiled. A celebrity used your quote, "Truth ages better than lies," in her award speech. I chuckled. Good. Maybe this time it'll stick. The internet wasn't my enemy anymore. It was just a stage, and I'd finally learned to step off when the applause got too loud. A few months later, I launched a small mentorship program, helping young women photographers find their voice. During the first session, one of them asked, "Do you ever regret exposing her?" I paused, considering the question carefully. No, I said finally, because exposure isn't revenge when it reveals what's real. They nodded, writing it down like a quote, but to me it wasn't wisdom. It was survival, turned art. Once I exposed her truth, now I help others capture theirs. Sometimes I still receive messages, not from trolls or strangers anymore, but from people who were once like me. A mother who uncovered her husband's secret debts, a man who proved his innocence after being framed online. Each message ended the same way. Thank you for reminding me that truth can be beautiful. And every time I read those words, I smile, because they never thank me for revenge. They thank me for reflection. One morning, while cleaning the studio, I found my old camera, the same one that caught Grace's secret. It was scratched, slightly bent, but still functional. I held it up to the light, the lens catching a beam of morning gold. I lifted it slowly, looking through the viewfinder, not to capture something, but to remind myself how far I'd come. For the first time, the lens didn't feel heavy. It felt like home. I aimed it toward the window where the sunlight spilled across the floor. Click. The sound wasn't a trigger anymore. It was freedom. The same lens that once broke my heart now builds my peace. Later that day, I framed that photo, sunlight, dust, and all. No filters, no edits. Just life, as it is. When Leela asked what I'd call it, I smiled. Reclaimed light. Because that's what I'd done. Reclaimed everything she'd tried to dim. That night, I locked up the studio and stood outside looking at the city lights. They flickered like old memories, some bright, some fading. I took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill my lungs. Once I thought being erased was the worst thing that could happen to me. Now I realized it was the only way I could rewrite myself. Because sometimes when someone tries to delete your name from their story, the universe hands you the pen. As I walked home, the streets hummed softly, street lamps glowing like quiet applause. And in that glow, I found peace. Not the kind that forgets, the kind that forgives and moves forward anyway. I whispered one last time, this time not to Grace, not to the past, but to every woman who's ever been silenced. Once she banned me from her wedding to protect her lies. Now people hire me to capture their truth. She erased me from her story, but I became the one who developed the ending.